We've got a new presenter tonight, and it's Nicki Vo. Tonight, she's going to share with us a concept that she uses that achieves success in her life, including coaching and developing others, networking, effectively managing change. So I'm really interested about that. She's going to explain how to think like a caveman. The three areas in business and personal life where this thinking is prominent, how to use it, and this way of thinking to put together an elevator pitch, put together a few strategies where the concept can be applied. So by the time we're done, you should be able to walk away understanding how to think like a caveman, how simple it is, yet powerful to help anyone become of high value to their company, community, friends, and family. So she has a distinguished resume. I'm just going to tease you with a little bit. She's an accomplished innovation leader with over 17 years in the chemical industry. She's held various roles as an individual contributor, manager, senior executive leader. She holds a BS in chemistry from UW-Whitewater, master's in science in chemistry from UW-Madison, and an executive MBA from RIT, which is consistently ranked as a top 10 school by US News and World Report, Princeton Review, Poets and Quants. And in 2018, she was named top 40 of nationwide MBA students by Poets and Quants. So there's more, but I'd like to hear what she has to say. So I'll turn it over to Nicki.
Thank you so much, Mr. Toastmaster, for that gracious introduction. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Looking good.
Wonderful. All right. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. My name is Nicki Vo, and I am honored and excited to be here. Today, I will share on how to think like a caveman to overcome fear. This subject area is something I am deeply passionate about. For one, it is both quirky and funny, and I love being quirky and funny. But secondly, and more importantly, I have seen results and success and progress in not just myself, but in others with whom I have applied this thinking towards. There is much I can share. What you're getting today is just the tip of the iceberg. I actually had contemplated writing a book on this, but nonetheless, I hope you will walk away today with some nugget of information that you can use both in your life, but possibly also in Toastmasters. Allow me to begin with a short story. I have been very fortunate to have been successful in many areas of my life, but that journey was not easy. This is a picture of a framed canvas that I have hung on my office wall. My office is currently being renovated, but this picture represents all the things that I need to go through in order to be where I want to be. And much like this picture, there are many things beneath the surface that you just can't see. I have faced a number of setbacks, countless failures, and have made hundreds of mistakes. But mostly, I was plagued by fear. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago, after I had lost my son, that I started to notice everyone is plagued by fear. And it is through my grief and my prayers that I started to understand a fundamental truth behind effective leadership. That had sparked a passion in me and a mission to help others overcome their fear and achieve success in their own leadership journey. What I had discovered is that the key to overcoming fear is to think like a caveman. Yes, think like a caveman. This is quite an odd concept coming from someone like me who leads innovation, right? But this truth has played out time and time again. Today, I will share with you on what thinking like a caveman means and why it is important. I'll go over the three areas in which it can be applied, mostly in selling and marketing products and services, in managing change, and in building relationships. I'll also go through the 3 C's strategies, which is something you can use to apply this thinking in your life through communications, consistency, and community. Let's begin. Part 1, how to think like a caveman. Imagine this. You've just lost your job. You're forced to find a new one in a new city, possibly even in a new country. You don't know much about your new environment or what to expect. You're scared. Now let's take the same scenario, but change a few details. We go back 30,000 years. You've just lost your tribe. You're forced to migrate to a new grassland. You don't know much about your new environment or what to expect. You're scared. These 2 scenarios are essentially the same. The difference is 30,000 years ago, our life was simple. Our needs were simple. Every day, the caveman had only one singular goal, and that is to survive. Fast forward to today, and while our society has become much more sophisticated with artificial intelligence, computers, robotics, and automation, our needs are still the same. Every day, we are thinking, acting, and behaving in ways to survive. For example, we have a tendency to gravitate towards people who are similar to us. It could be through a shared hobby, shared taste in music, shared favorite sports team. We could come from the same ethnicity, graduated from the same college, or even grew up in the same neighborhood. These people have something in common with us, and therefore we feel connected and safe. We feel as if we are part of a tribe. I know of a very great salesman who was good at closing deals without it ever feeling like he was closing deals. He would find something unique about his customers, an embroidered logo on their shirt or their jacket, a memorabilia on their desk or wall, or a personalized pen or notebook that the customer was carrying. He would take this item and strike up conversation. Immediately, his customers felt connected and comfortable enough to buy from him. He understood how to think like a caveman. Alternatively, when we are in situations where our survival is at risk, our fears will heighten. This is the case when the situation is unpredictable, unknown, or we lose our sense of control. Many years ago, I worked for a company whose culture was full of fear. The employees were guarded, didn't share information, and it was hyper-competitive. Every caveman for themselves. What this company had done is they adopted Jack Welch's vitality curve, where every year they laid off the bottom 10% of their workforce. This eventually instilled fear to the point where employees stopped bringing their best selves to work. They became a laggard in innovation and new product development and eventually lost significant market share. Part 2, the 3 areas of application. Now that we've understood what it means to think like a caveman, let's explore the 3 areas in which you can apply this to, mostly in selling and marketing products and services, in managing change, and in building relationships. Let's take a deeper dive into each one. Selling or marketing products and services. Have you ever considered why you bought a particular product or service? It most likely was because it fulfilled one of 3 needs: functional, social, and emotional. And just before you bought it, you were asking yourself, but you didn't realize it, can this product or service help me to survive? If a product or service fulfills a functional need, it will have addressed a tangible or a physical problem that you have. If it fulfills a social need, it'll help you feel connected with others, connected to a tribe. And if it fulfills an emotional need, then it will help you feel better, as if with it, you can definitely survive. Let's take cars as an example. If all I care about is buying a car that will fulfill a functional need, then I will have bought something like a used Toyota Corolla. It'll get me from point A to point B with no bells or whistles. It will have done its job. However, if I buy a Tesla, I will be among other Tesla owners where together we can be cool, saving the planets. But if I bought a Ferrari, then I would be the coolest kid on the block. This car will bring out that emotional feeling of pride, like I have finally made it. This car will be a token of my success. By the way, I don't have a Ferrari. Additionally, we need to feel confident about our choices. Whenever I buy from Amazon, I will only buy products that have high 5-star ratings, have excellent reviews, or come highly recommended from a friend. In each of these scenarios, I am confident that I had made the right choice. The best selling and marketing campaigns touch base in all of these areas. Think about that for Toastmasters. Managing change. Anyone who has managed change knows how difficult it is to get people to change. I have found that people's approach to change has a lot to do with their life experience, as well as if they can see the change being beneficial or harmful to their survival. Some people will readily adopt change because they can see the new being more beneficial than the old. However, most people will stick with the old because it is familiar, predictable, and perceived as safe. Nonetheless, here are 4 ways that you can actually help people manage through the change. First, provide clear and transparent communications. I will touch base on this later in the speech, but know that when you provide clear and transparent communications, you are taking away the unknown and the unpredictable. This gives people that confidence that they know what to expect through the change. Provide them with tools and skills to be successful. Many people are afraid to change because they are afraid of failing. They are afraid of exposing what they don't know, their gaps, as well as their weaknesses. When you can provide them with tools and skills to be successful, they will have the confidence to be able to go through the change effectively. Give them a sense of control by involving them in the process. Venturing into the unknown is risky for a lot of people. When you can give them a sense of control, they will feel as if they're in charge of their own destiny, which inherently lowers that fear. And finally, build a community of support. Give them a tribe in which they can survive. All of this is to say that managing change inherently comes down to fear. And if we can understand what is preventing that person because of their fear, we can help them through that fear and therefore be able to manage them through that change. Building relationships. All throughout this speech, I had talked about building relationships, but let me expand on this further. As I had mentioned before, we have a tendency to gravitate towards people who are similar to us, but we also need to feel safe. When we are safe, we can bring our best 100% authentic selves to the table. When we're not safe, we will shut down, be reserved, be distant, or only bring a sliver of who we are to the table. This concept is so powerful that it had led to a paradigm shift in leadership philosophy, birthing new concepts such as emotional intelligence, teal organizations, servant leadership, and psychological safety. What all of these concepts have in common is the goal of creating an environment that is safe for people to be themselves, where they can survive and thrive. The best boss I've ever had understood this concept very, very well. He gave me a safe space to express my thoughts, voice my concerns, challenge his way of thinking, but also bring in many new risks. Because of that, we became the best high performing team of the entire company, we solved many numerous complex problems, invented many novel innovations, and significantly grew revenue. Therefore, if you want to bring an environment where people can bring the best selves to work, then you want to first think like a caveman and make your environment safe for them to operate in. Part 3, the 3 C's strategy. Now that we know what thinking like a caveman is, and we've explored the 3 areas in which we can apply it to, let's talk about how we can further apply this in our life. And we can do that through 3 C's: communication, consistency, and community. Communication. Caveman thinking and survival communication is best when it is clear and simple. When we can fully understand what is being communicated to us, we will be at ease and confident in that we can move forward. If that communication is complex or confusing, we will be unsure, full of doubt, and hesitate to move forward. For example, if I take this passage, which is from Julius Caesar, written by Shakespeare, and I were to give this as a piece of advice, would you understand this? There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads unto fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. Did you get that? If you studied Shakespeare, sure, you would have understood that, but most people don't understand Shakespeare. For me, when I first read this, I was utterly confused and not sure how to take this. I actually had to take time and effort to research it, and then I still wasn't sure. If I were to take this passage and simplify it, it would become this: never let a good opportunity pass. There you have it. Simple, clear, concise. You know exactly the type of advice I was giving. Every year, for New Year's, I give myself resolutions, but I do it using 3 simple words. This year, my words are declutter, simplify, focus. For example, I have decided to declutter my mind by no longer binge watching on K-drama, but rather I will focus my mind on reading books. Therefore, every time I have the urge to watch K-drama, I remember my resolutions in those 3 simple words, and then I pick up a book instead. Because my resolutions are in 3 simple words, they are easy to remember, clear and simple, and therefore I can better reach my goals. Therefore, strategy number 1 is to keep your communications clear and simple. Consistency. In the caveman days, there is greater risk of not surviving when your environment is not predictable. If every day you know where and how to hunt for your food, then your chances of survival are greater. Anything else is a potential threat. Nowadays, we have systems, structures, and habits to help us with that predictability. And while we can handle the occasional threats, living in a perpetual state of unpredictability and chaos can utterly drain all of us. We need consistency in our lives. I once worked for a manager who was a closet alcoholic. His decisions, moods, and behaviors were all over the place. He was irrational and unpredictable. And because I could not understand him or predict his behavior, I was on pins and needles whenever he was around. I was afraid that I would lose my job or do anything wrong, and therefore this job did not bring out the best in me. On the flip side, if we are in environments that are stable, safe, and consistent atmosphere, as well as the leaders being consistent and stable and safe, we will flourish. Imagine if you were to work for someone like the Dalai Lama or Abraham Lincoln or Indra Nooyi. How would you feel? These leaders are strong, stable, and like a rock, so much so that they have brought their environments through much of chaos and into survival and thriving. Therefore, strategy number 2 is be consistent in your thoughts, actions, and behavior. Community. As I had mentioned before, when we feel like we belong to a tribe, we feel more safe and then we can actually survive. But you just can't throw a bunch of cavemen together and hope that a tribe will form. There are a few things that you have to actually put into the tribe for it to work. The first being create multiple connection points, especially in the beginning. Coming into something new is especially frightening for many people. Many people decide in the very first few moments of the job, club, or event if it is for them. Research has showed that the first 90 days of onboarding in a new job is the most critical. If people do not feel safe or that they can survive and thrive, they will actually go to a new tribe. Additionally, we need a minimum of 8 touch points, of which 12 prior have been ignored, for people to become familiar with us and therefore be able to engage with us. Know that each person has unique skills and strengths. Use them. In Dan Pink's TED Talk, The Puzzle of Motivation, he talks about the 3 things that people need in order to flourish and be motivated: purpose, autonomy, and mastery. If you have not seen this TED Talk, highly recommend it. When you can recognize and draw upon each person's skills, their unique skills, you prime them for success and on the road towards mastery. This is actually one of my key secret weapons for building high-performing teams. I would have each person take StrengthsFinder, find their top 5 strengths, and then I would also observe them in their element. I would notice where they're great at, where they tend to struggle, but also what excites them. And from all that, I then put them on the right seat of the bus and I craft their responsibility to align with their strengths. What this has done for me is it has created massive motivated teams, as well as the team was not envious or in competition with each other. Everyone knew their strengths and everyone played to them. This resulted in the team being on fire. Number 3, define ground rules, roles, and responsibilities. Communicate it often. Similar to what I had mentioned before, in that in order for us to feel safe, we need systems and structures. If we can define the ground rules, what the goals are, and everyone's responsibilities, we will have a greater chance of surviving as a tribe. Imagine if you were to play Monopoly with no rules, no responsibilities. Everyone pretty much can do whatever they want, and everyone's the banker. How would you imagine that game would progress? It would most likely be utter chaos. Do you guys want to see the most coveted world-class team that survives together as a tribe? Let me show you.
Wow.
Every year, the Formula F1 pit stop team races for the world record for the fastest pit times. I believe the fastest pit times right now is a little under 2 seconds. And they achieve this by establishing ground rules, defining what each person's responsibilities are, focusing on their own task. Every person has their own task, and practicing together to being the best. Therefore, strategy number 3 is to deliberately design and continually engineer your tribe. Here are the 3 C's: communication, consistency, community. Number 1, keep your communications clear and simple. Number 2, be consistent in your thoughts, actions, and behavior. And number 3, deliberately design and continually engineer your tribe. But wait, there is a bonus C. Yes, a bonus C. And that is to connect the dots. We are often told that we need to have big dreams, big, hairy, audacious goal. But for many people, these dreams seem very far fetched. How can they get from their current reality to their vision or their goals? And the best way to do that is to connect the dots. If we can connect many smaller dots so that they're closer to each other, we have a better chance of reaching our goal or our vision versus having many further dots, many further dots. Therefore, when it comes to connecting dots, we will want to build smaller dots one at a time. We will also want to build dots that can be connected from the previous one. In other words, draw upon your knowledge, your strengths, and your experiences. And then also know that many smaller dots make seeing the bigger picture much, much easier. Let me wrap up. Caveman theory. Caveman theory is thinking like a caveman where everyone is trying to survive. There are 3 areas that we can apply this to in selling or marketing products or services, in managing change, and in building relationships. There are 3 strategies with a bonus that we can use to apply caveman theory to our lives. In communication, by keeping it clear and simple, through consistency in your thoughts, actions, and behaviors, and in community by deliberately designing and engineering the tribe, and connect the dots, connect many small ones to reach your goal. In the words of a very famous caveman, Fred Flintstone, yabba dabba do. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicki. Wow, that was a lot to take in.
Yeah, sorry. Like I said, there was a lot of information.
There was a lot there. Thank you for presenting. I've got a couple topics that I'd like to tee off, and then of course encourage everyone else to chime in by raising your hand or what have you. So the first thing that occurred to me is those are all great ideas. So what kind of experience do you have with trying them, failing, getting feedback, and then kind of redoing? Because we're not gonna get all of those things right from the start.
Yeah, from my experience, as long as I always thought that people are just coming from a place of fear and that most of their actions and behaviors are pretty much stemming from that, and the way that they communicate it is often sideways. If I can always approach it with a place of fear and gingerly approach them because of that, I feel that they place a lot more trust in me, and therefore I'm at a bigger opportunity to explore different areas. For example, I've had multiple employees where through reading their strengths finder and exploring, I would suggest to them, hey, I think you would be great at this area. Let's try it. Obviously, I didn't know if they were going to be successful or not, but I had an inkling because they understood that I understood them coming from a place of fear. I would work with them to say, if it doesn't work, we can always put you back. It's just a temporary trial. And because they trusted me so much, we tried it and it actually worked. But those are scenarios where I think because I generally came from a place where I knew that they're mostly afraid. And if I could just understand that, then it helps me with that opportunity to try things.
Okay. All right, that's good. The other thing that crossed my mind was this would be, or I mean it is a great presentation, like if you were going to do it in a business environment. certainly. But what about Toastmasters? So, here we are. This is the club support sessions. These are ideas that we should be able to take to our clubs. So any experience in the Toastmaster universe to applying some of these principles?
Absolutely. The first one I can think of right away is that selling and marketing products and services. When people come to Toastmaster, they have a functional need. They know that they want to do better in their speech. But where I feel that we can really encompass more is to bring that emotional and that social element to the table. So provide an environment where it is very social, where they can feel connected, but also give them some sort of emotional real estate so that they can feel proud of the speeches they have done. In addition, know that the very first few moments are the most critical. So connect with them often and connect to them and try to understand how are they feeling socially, how are they feeling emotionally. And by doing it often in the very beginning, you have better chances that they will stick with you in the longer run.
All right, good. Thanks for that suggestion. All right, Yuri's always got his hand up. Thanks, Yuri. What do you got for us? Question, comment?
Hi, Nicki. Earlier on, Keith mentioned UW. Well, let's not, I do have a question before that. When Keith mentioned you have, I think it was undergraduate from UW Whitewater. Well, I'll tell you right now, that's two of us in the room at least. I don't know, in case it's kind of silly, but my question is kind of more follows up to what Keith was asking. Often, I've seen that lately in one of my clubs. Often, we have guests who come, and everyone here tries to give the best meeting possible, and then the guests just tend to kind of disappear, and that could be due to maybe they have a commitment that next time, or whatever it may be. But kind of based on what you spoke about today, what I'm trying to improve at is how I check in with them, or how do I ask them, even just reminding them about the meeting, what kind of phrases are helpful to use to kind of touch on that their fear and my ability to connect with them. It's continually hard to show someone the value of, in this case, Toastmasters, if they only come once and they kind of show up again in a month and a half.
Yeah, I can see how it is very challenging. The interesting thing is that every caveman have their own sort of tribe that they want to belong to. And there's not just one tribe that fits all. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes we actually need people that can connect with us, that maybe the first person that we're exposed to is not a connection, or the second or the third. So what I find is that I like to sit and listen and actually observe people. And when I do that, I can actually pull out things that I think are important to them. There's this saying that says that people often show their emotions like Texas Hold'em. So if they've got great cards, they will not show their cards. They will bluff. However, if they don't have great cards, they will bluff and actually expose more of what they are lacking. So when I watch people, I try to understand, what are they trying to communicate to me that is not verbal? And based on that, then I'll start to see, okay, that's something that they're most likely afraid of. So let me draw upon my network to see, who do I know who's great at that can actually connect with them. And if they don't connect with that person for the first time, maybe they need somebody different. But as I mentioned earlier, they actually need 8 or more touch points to feel connected. So the first time you reach out to them, they probably are like, oh, this is nothing. But if you continually to go after that, and maybe at different angles or different people, then after the 8th time, then they'll start to say, okay, yeah, I can understand Toastmasters is probably the place that really cares about me versus having just the one connection. When you only have the one connection, don't actually trust you. You actually need multiple connections for people to feel familiar and then start to trust.
Yeah, so we got a question from Cindy, also a Strength Finder coach here. She wants to know what your top 5 are.
So number 1 is significance. Number 2 is restoration. Number 3 is achiever. Number 4 is competition. And number 5 is learner. And I can tell you that those 5 are both my strengths, but also my weaknesses. So I know where I can actually do damage.
All right, thank you. Jennifer.
Hi, Nicki. Wow, that is amazing. It's so good to see you again. Thank you so much. I remember this speech. And when I saw the title, I was a bit puzzled because I was like, I remember this title. And I was like, I don't remember Yvonne giving it, but that was really great. So I can get you to here. That's great. So Nicki gave this speech in a much simplified version last year, I believe, is at the UWM workshop. Really way improved, very enriched. I mean, I'm very, very impressed with what you had to say. As I think deeply, the concepts, like Keith was saying, the concept that you present are very deep concepts, because I think you start off by telling us very basically that we are all looking to survive. And that the thing that really stops people from thriving is the fear that all of us as human beings, whether we're talking about our traditional in the caveman or thereabout on the modern society, is fear. And that there are things as leaders we can do to mitigate that fear. And talking about the 3 C's, being very consistent, because in a very unshakable world, very I'm looking for the different word that's pretty much saying people who are not very consistent. We need to be, as leaders, we need to create structures and systems that other people can look up to. So even as Keith was saying, I think even just breaking down just some of the concepts, having a speech on areas of application, and then helping us to connect the dots. I like the connected dots bit because that's one of the things that I find is a real strength for anyone wanting to thrive, is being able to connect the dots. Focusing on that and helping us to translate that in Toastmasters speak, I think that would be absolutely amazing. I'm really very much impressed, and I want to thank you for giving us this gift. Yvonne has your hand up. Yvonne.
Yep, Yvonne.
Unmute. Thanks, guys. Nicki, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. I had goose pimples. I remember the first time we met as mentor and mentee. And I don't know if you were pretending and if you were trying to check out my strengths. But Nicki said, I am so nervous. I am not very confident I can do this. And she had fears. And I know that fears are legitimate for all of us, but I rather doubted it because she presents herself in such a great and lucid manner. I felt like I was listening to a TED Talk. It was just absolutely wonderful. And I don't want to put you on the spot. You'll probably kill me later, but this sounds like such a great TLI session. I'm looking at the screen and wishing there were so many more people here to hear what you had to say. So as your coach and your mentor, you hit it out of the ballpark. I think one of the things that Nicki talked about as far as meeting the guest or the club member where they are, so many times we have a policy in the Menominee Falls Club, which Nicki is a part of, pairing new members with a mentor right away. And it's a good policy and practice to have because I think the member feels important, feels validated, and there's somebody there that's taking the path with them. But there's something that Nicki said that made me think about that, because it might not be the right person. And how do you intervene afterwards? And you talked about the 8 different points of connection, Nicki, and making sure that that might not be the right person. We have a situation in Menominee Falls where we paired up a new member with a mentor, and it just wasn't working out because the mentor is somebody that doesn't come to meetings all the time, is absent, and doesn't follow up, and doesn't provide the sense of continuity and consistency that you talked about. And the message for all of us here on the screen is, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Deal with the fear, either the fear of the mentor being inadequate or not committed, or the fear of the new member in their expectations and anticipation. And so now we've paired up that new member with another mentor, and it's working out. We did not lose that member. You know, we have a president who is very stalwart and very sensitive to a lot of these nuances in relationships. And she's on my screen here and she's smiling, and she handled it. So one of the things I heard, and I'll stop, one of the things I heard you talking about, Nicki, it made me think a lot of people come to Toastmasters with a clear expectation of what they want and how that experience will be. And for some people, the experience might be too social and they wanted something else more classroom or academic-like. Or then you have some other people who came expecting to have a social party at every meeting, and it's too rigid. And so they don't feel a good fit. They're not part of the tribe. So some of the messages that I heard you say, Nicki, was, well, how do you deal with that member and understanding their needs so that you can help them adjust instead of having them quit because this is not their tribe?
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. Let me, if I could add more to that. So a lot of this, when people come to something brand new, they are curious, and there's actually a roadmap that people go through in terms of building relationships. So the very first stage is curiosity. The second one is enlightenment, and the third is commitment. So the very first stage is they're curious. They somehow heard about Toastmasters as a place that can help them get better in speeches or some other aspect they're looking at. So they're curious, but they haven't progressed all the way through commitment yet. Once they get to a club and they're curious, they're trying to see, okay, is this club right for me? And in their mind, they have some need to fulfill: functional, emotional, social. So the goal is trying to understand, what is that need? And oftentimes there is a level of vulnerability to express what we need, especially to strangers. So a lot of people will not tell you what they need. So then we have to then take them to the stage of enlightenment where they can say, okay, this is what Toastmasters Club is like. This is how this club can help me survive. So if you can somehow understand, how can we help our club members survive, emotional, social, functional? And by the way, I think providing that strengths finder assessment up front and matching them with a corollary strengths finder mentor is an excellent idea. Somebody had brought that up. I think that's a great idea. But based on that, then you can actually get those connection points further along. And the hardest part is the commitment phase. That's when they're like, oh, I'm going to hand over my check and I'm going to actually commit to Toastmasters for the next 6 months. And I have to, do speeches and that sort of stuff. So really, that very front phase between curiosity to commitment is very, very challenging. And that's where you can actually lose them. So having enough connection points, being familiar, having that level of trust, being able to address what is their needs, and then are we providing that needs? I think that's very, very helpful. Another way to describe it is, I mentioned my top 5 strengths. If you glean all 34 of my strengths, I think on the top part of the totem pole is strategy and achievement. On the very bottom is the emotion part. So I'm terrible at emotions. For me, you get me in front of a crowd, I can do perfectly well. You get me one-on-one, and I actually have to deal with people's emotions, that's a vulnerable risk for me. So for me, I connected right away with Yvonne because I could tell just by the way she was talking with me, we were talking more on that tactical side that I was looking to fulfill my need in terms of I just want to know how to actually give a speech. I didn't have a lot of focus on the connection or the emotion side. So that really helped me. So to Yvonne's point, I think really playing around to see if that person has the right mentor, giving them a mentor, which by the way is basically an elderly tribesman, um, and then trying to understand what are they actually looking for and can we provide them, and then also asking them a lot of questions, because when you ask questions you are engaging them, and then they will feel like they're in charge of their own destiny. That was one of the points I mentioned in the speech.
Thank you so much. I didn't want to raise my hand up because I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. You're still learning more about how to navigate the Zoom environment. Your comment about the 3 stages, starting with curiosity to enlightenment. We experienced that actually at both of my Toastmasters meeting this week. In each meeting, we had two guests. And for me, as a practice, I always will say, hey, do you guys have enough? Do you have a few minutes after the meeting for me to interact with them so to figure out the level of engagement and interest with Toastmasters? So on the Wednesday, that was the Southwest meeting, Polly. One of the girls, we asked them whether they wanted to participate in the table topics, and Polly was leading that, and she said no. But what was interesting is during the debriefing session, she kind of asked some vulnerable questions. And so for we as a group, we had an opportunity just before we called it a day to address some of the things that she was curious about and create some sort of enlightenment. So I'm 100% sure that in 2 weeks, they're going to be coming back again, and they're going to have their questions answered, enlightenment, and they're going to be very, very close to making a commitment. So the reason why I bring this up is because I think one of the things we can do for club quality is to ensure that we create a space in just 5 minutes of addressing guest questions and curiosity. That can translate big time into retention and having guests come back for the second and third visit. So thank you so much for giving me the science behind some sort of informal methods that we're employing in some of my clubs.
All right. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other questions or comments out there?
Hi, Nicki. When in the beginning, Keith mentioned it sounds to me like you work at very different places, all kinds of call them you gain all kinds of skills. Probably far different than maybe staying at the same place for 10, 20 years as used to be the norm. It's different today. What looking back at your presentation, which one of these concepts have you applied the most, or once you learn about the concept, what concept have you applied that worked well for you, even if initially you kind of struggled in applying it?
Yeah, I think the community definitely is probably the biggest concept that I learned late as to why it's important. But I learned that it is important because if I don't connect with somebody, I won't feel like this is the community for me. So for me, my way of connection with people is seeing somebody who has a similar sort of outlook in life that I did. So whenever I worked in a new company, first of all, it's super hard to reestablish your brand. And that is the first thing I always had to do every time I go into a new company is to reestablish my brand. But I looked for somebody that I knew I could trust and that we could actually connect on a very professional level. Once I had that connection, it made everything that I do much more I was more confident moving forward, because then I would have somebody I would check in to say, hey, so-and-so, is this how I'm supposed to make coffee? And then they would give me kind of like the lay of the land. Is like, no, you don't want to use this coffee. You want to use this coffee. And by having that connection and that community, it really helped me be more confident in the decisions I made, and that I wasn't actually going to ruin myself because I was the new kid on the block. So I think community is probably the biggest thing that I learned late in life, why it's important, but it's definitely important.
So I have two questions for you, Nikki. I'm like your biggest fan. You want
I
to
think I'm your biggest
Yeah.
fan.
Two. One question is, your mentor said something very important, which is a TED Talk, right? So is it something that you seriously consider pursuing that? But even more related to Toastmasters is, could you kind of share with us, like, how has Toastmasters really helped you craft and really refine for you as in your career? How has Toastmasters really helped? Because I know that you joined probably 2 years. I think you've been Toastmasters pretty short time.
Yeah, I did not realize that giving speeches to me really wasn't that difficult, as long as I understood the framework, the system, the structure. And for me, the structure of writing speeches is very much so like giving a paper. So what we're taught by our English professors, that you always want like the key title, and then a summary followed by 3 points, and then you talk about those 3 points, and then at the very bottom you summarize it all. That's basically giving a speech right there. And I had not understood that they were connected. And once I can understand that, and Yvonne just gave me a lot of information. Once I understood that that's how you frame a speech together, that gave me a roadmap, a predictable roadmap, such that going forward, I can write all my speeches the same way. So every time I think about a speech, I think about, okay, what is the ultimate goal that I want out of this speech? Can I come up with a crafty, catchable title? And then what are my 3 take-home points? And then based on the 3 take-home points, can I expand each one? And then let's summarize it all at the bottom.
Okay, thank you. So the other question about the TED Talk still remains unanswered. But it's something you'd consider giving. I want you to get a commitment, and it's recording now. I think you'd be awesome at it. Awesome.
Actually, I actually have a different speech that I'm much more familiar with, that I think I would do a better job giving a a TED Talk on, because as I mentioned in the beginning of my speech, I had lost my son. And when I lost my son, which was 10 years ago, it really changed my life. And I started to see purpose. And I started to go down the road of understanding, well, what is my purpose in life? Because for me, if I'm still here and he's not, I still have a purpose. So what is my purpose? So I actually have built a system around purpose, and I actually like to teach people that system. So this is akin to that, but this is something that I feel like my mission is to help people overcome fear, but I also feel like I also want to help people find their purpose. So maybe that TED Talk first, then this one second.
All right. I was going to say, you don't have to choose. You can do both. Yeah. Thank you. I think that sounds amazing. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And there's a note on the chat. I'm sure Jason, as incoming district director, is making note of that particular opportunity, and then probably passing on to club growth. Incoming program quality director, Robert. Again, we've not done the elections yet, so don't send me an email with campaign violations. I'm just telling you, that's what we are hoping the leadership pipeline for the district is coming forward. So, Nicki, don't be surprised if you get a tap on the shoulder to do a TLI.
Okay. TLI is Toastmasters
Leadership Institute.
Okay, great.
So it's a presentation to club officers training, so that's be coming up in July to the August period. So we'll see. Okay, thank you so much. Let me mute at this point. I have a lot to say, but I'll mute.
Okay, Yuri, another comment from you, sir?
Oh, yeah, 6 minutes, okay. Nikki, could you share with us, and this maybe touch on my other earlier question, but could you share with us maybe one approach that either you learned that you were under impression was I don't know, was a decent approach, but then through maybe talking with your mentor, whether it's Yvonne or someone else, that they gave you a kind of another one that turned out on from some thinking turned out to be more applicable or more practical, or the one that got you closer to your goal. For example, more related to Toastmasters, I'll use myself as an example. Often, I've been around Toastmasters for now 10 years, and often I find myself trying to connect with a guest that, and I'm likely of all the people in my club, I might be the likely the best, not the best person, but the person who is actually at the club most of the time, meetings, and I'm trying to, as I'm doing actually now in real life, in real time, it counts to connect with a new guest and trying to get them. I'm trying to say, I want you to join the club, and maybe my approach isn't working yet because I haven't joined. What's an approach that you have tried, it not quite work out, but then somebody else suggested a different one that when you tried it, it got you to your goal?
Yeah, great question. So this is a really cool fable that my favorite boss of all time had given to me, and he was trying to get me to understand that my approach was a little too aggressive. But once I learned this fable, it is something I have applied throughout my life, and it has changed the way that I've approached not just my daily life, but also my professional life. And maybe this is something that could benefit you. So the fable goes like this: there is two elements that were fighting with each other to prove that they were the stronger element. It was the sun and the wind. And the sun, the wise sun, has been there the longest. So he says, I'm the wisest, I've been here the longest, I'm the better element. Mr. Wind says, no. I have lots of power. I am more powerful than you. So what they decided is to have a contest. And through this contest, they saw a kid with a parka on a bench in the park. And they said, okay, whoever can get this kid to take off his jacket is the stronger element. So Mr. Wind, being all, cocky and everything, said, I'm going to go first and I'm going to show you how it's done. So he blows all his might, high winds, like hurricane and all that other stuff. And the more that the wind would blow and more strength that he applied, the more the kid just held onto his jacket and wouldn't let it go. So finally, Mr. Wind gave up, and then Mr. Sun said, okay, my turn. Let me show how it's done. So Mr. Sun gently raised the temperature to the point where degree by degree by degree, the kid got so hot that he took off his jacket. So sometimes force and aggression, which is something that I did in the beginning of my career, is not the answer, because the more we force something, the more people will retreat and not go forward. So instead, we have to understand and we have to influence. So that was what my mentor, my manager, was telling me, is that the best way to move forward is to do it through influence and not through force. So sometimes those 8 touch points, one after another, might be too much at one time, that they're like, whoa, I am being very cautious. I don't know what to take of this Toastmaster. They're getting very, very aggressive. So sometimes we have to approach it in a very subtle way where they don't see all that force behind that. So I've changed my methods since then, and I've actually approached things a lot more subtly, more with influence, and I do a lot of listening. I learned many years ago the art of listening, and I gotta tell you, I've watched a lot of people, they're not great at listening. So Listening is actually a really great skill to learn.
All right, so we're up against our time, so I'm gonna ask Yuri and Todd if they are willing to host the after party and move it there. Move the discussion there.
Not today. As I understand, Todd is away. Well, he's not at home, which is a little difficult to kind of manage that. But I mean, there will be others, and thank you, Nikki. This was highly impactful.
Thank you.
All
Okay.
right, thanks,
Okay. All right.
thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye-bye.